As the sun scorched the cobblestones of Victorian London in the summer of 1858, the air was thick with an overwhelming stench that plummeted the city into chaos. Imagine bustling streets filled with horse-drawn carriages, merchants hawking their wares, and families trying to escape the oppressive heat. Amidst this vibrant life, an insidious problem loomed. A concoction of human waste and industrial refuse festering in the streets, combining with the rising temperatures to unleash a foul odor that would transform daily life into a waking nightmare. In this boiling summer, the overcrowded city faced not the typical trials of war or famine, but rather the horrifying reality of its own filth. The Thames River, once a source of life and commerce, had turned into a putrid gutter. It was a vital artery for the capital. But now, with its surface choked by debris and effluent, it spelled disaster. Families living close to the river could smell the decay wafting through their windows, permeating their homes and lives. Reports of cholera outbreaks surged as the noxious fumes invaded every corner of London, triggering widespread panic. The disease was merciless, claiming lives seemingly at random, and the public was desperate for answers. Everywhere you turned, there were reminders of the neglect and mismanagement that had spiraled into this crisis. The lack of a proper sewage system had meant waste was frequently dumped into the river, polluting not just the waterway, but the very air Londoners breathed. British Parliament, which met mere blocks away from the Thames, had become a lifeline for the indignant public. As they convened, politicians scrabbled to deflect blame and find scapegoats. Yet their grand debates did little to alleviate the stench or the suffering on the streets. It was amidst this political turmoil that an unlikely hero would rise to confront the crisis head-on. No, it wasn't a member of the aristocracy, but rather an engineer named Joseph Bazalgette. He was not well known outside of his professional circles, yet he was destined to play a pivotal role in unraveling the tangled web of neglect that had ensnared London in a grotesque cycle. Bazalgette understood that the existing systems of waste disposal were not only outdated but fundamentally flawed. He advocated for a comprehensive sewer system, one capable of routing waste away from the populated areas and into treatment facilities far beyond the Thames and the city itself. Despite the urgency of his vision, Bazalgette faced fierce opposition. Local officials and politicians were keen to maintain the status quo, fearful of the costs and the political fallout from such an ambitious project. But public pressure mounted as the death toll rose, and with it the realization that the health of the city depended on immediate action. The Great Stink was not just an issue of smell, it was a clarion call for reform in a city that had allowed convenience and gain to eclipse human health. London was on the brink, suffocated by waste, reeling from illness, and yearning for change. The summer of 1858 ignited a public health revolution as the city's inhabitants began to rally around the call for better sanitation and healthier living conditions. In doing so, they would unknowingly set into motion a transformation that would redefine urban infrastructure, laying the groundwork for modern health initiatives that resonate to this very day. As the summer of 1858 wore on, the stench rising from the River Thames grew intolerable, transforming the lifeblood of London into a toxic brew. The Thames, once revered for its beauty and vitality, had become the city's prime sewer, carrying not just the waters of the river, but also the combined filth of human waste, industrial runoff, and mismanaged garbage. This menacing concoction not only filled the air with a rancid odor, but also posed a grave public health threat. The roots of this crisis can be traced back to a series of decisions made over decades. In the mid-19th century, the rapid expansion of London saw a dramatic increase in its population. Industrialization brought wealth, but it also brought filth and disease. Toilets were rudimentary, designed to wash waste into the river, while the city sewage system was insufficient to handle the sheer volume of waste being deposited into the Thames. By then, the river was not just polluted, it was regularly inundated with the remnants of the city's sanitation failures. Amid this growing crisis, cholera emerged as a lethal adversary. It was a time when the mechanisms of germ theory were still developing. Many believed in miasma theory, the idea that foul odors from decaying matter caused disease. The connection between the squalid conditions along the Thames and the cholera outbreaks was becoming undeniable, yet there was resistance to take decisive action. Each onset of cholera brought with it waves of panic, grief, and public outcry that echoed through the streets of London. With each death, the cries for reform grew louder. Politicians, however, seemed reluctant to heed the call, often opting to downplay the pressing need for change. Hastily Band-Aid measures were implemented, but they did little to address the root causes. They were predictable responses to a rapidly escalating crisis, systems stuck in a cycle of mediocrity rather than transformative innovation. Meanwhile, the public's anger boiled over. The Thames was no longer just a river, it was an affront to humanity, a festering sore that highlighted the neglect of those in power. As the heat soared in June of 1858, so did the anxiety of London's citizens. To many, the summer heat was no longer a welcome relief, but a catalyst for catastrophe. Sickness swept through neighborhoods and the death toll rose, igniting a fierce sense of urgency among the populace. Those living near the river are said to have been particularly aware of its malicious transformation, enduring days where the air felt heavy with a nauseating stench that clung to their very being, an unbearable reminder of their city's failings. But against this grave backdrop emerged a beacon of hope. Engineer Joseph Bazalgette. His vision for an entirely new sewer system was as radical as it was necessary. Yet, despite his ingenuity, Bazalgette faced an uphill battle. The political climate was fraught with resistance from officials who clung to outdated systems and traditional methods. They were often more concerned with financial implications than the looming health crisis. In the midst of widespread illness, as families grieved for lost loved ones, Bazalgette's ideas began to permeate the conversations of a desperate public, igniting both hope and renewed resolve. The time for change was nigh, but the question loomed, would the memories of the Great Stink, rather than the scent of innovation, guide London's future? As the oppressive heat of summer bore down upon London in 1858, the city became a cauldron of putrefaction. The stench emanating from the Thames was so profound that it nearly paralyzed daily life. Imagine navigating the bustling streets only to be assaulted by the acrid smell of decaying waste. The atmosphere was thick with the suffocating aroma of sewage mixed with industrial refuse. Residents scurried indoors, and merchants shuttered their windows, desperate to escape the foul miasma that hung over the city. By mid-July, the problem was not just the smell, but the chilling reality that this noxious air was believed to spread disease. Reports of cholera were rampant, with outbreaks claiming countless lives, amplifying the public's anxiety. In the drawing rooms of the privileged, discussions turned feverish. A pathway from odor to outrage took shape. The call for urgent intervention echoed through society as the wealthy elite, unable to ignore the putrefaction enveloping their estates, joined the cries of the poor from the slums. Parliament, however, was slow to act. The British political landscape of the time was embroiled in tense debates, with legislators divided on how to address the crisis. Many politicians were hesitant to invest in a comprehensive sanitation overhaul, wrestling over budgets while their constituents suffered. Yet, as public outcries grew louder, the stench forced their hands. Pamphlets decrying the government's inaction circulated widely, urging immediate reforms. The notorious Great Stink soon transformed from a mere nuisance into a national scandal. Amidst this tumult, one man emerged as a beacon of hope: Sir Joseph Bazalgette. This visionary engineer had long recognized the inadequacies of London's existing sewage infrastructure. Bazalgette advocated for a radical overhaul, proposing an extensive network of sewers designed to channel waste away from homes and into treatment facilities. His plan included using gravity to move waste efficiently, a revolutionary concept at the time. Despite encountering obstacles, both financial and political, critics labeled him a dreamer. Bazalgette's unwavering commitment to public health began to win supporters. His proposals rallied the attention of health reformers and concerned citizens alike, showcasing the growing belief that access to clean water and effective sanitation was not a privilege, but a fundamental human right. With the threat of cholera looming larger each day, even the most skeptical politicians had to confront the reality. The status quo was no longer tenable. As the summer wore on, tensions mounted. Bazalgette continued to advocate for his sewer system before Parliament, presenting not just statistics but personal stories of those ravaged by disease. He painted vivid pictures of the human toll, emphasizing that inaction was complicit in the suffering of the city's residents. The ghastly reality of the Great Stink ignited a sense of urgency among lawmakers. Public health was slipping away, and with it, the very fabric of society was at risk. The suffocating heat and foul smells became symbols of negligence. Bazalgette, armed with grim statistics and fervent supporters, pushed forward, representing both a pivotal moment in public health and an enduring legacy of urban engineering. His vision of a cleaner, healthier London was met with an awakening consensus. In a world where waste had been long ignored, perhaps a new era of sanitation reform was just around the corner. As the summer heat wore on, the cries of Londoners became hard to ignore. The stench of the River Thames reached new heights, and with it, the urgent demands for change became impossible for Parliament to dismiss. It was clear something had to be done. Enter Sir Joseph Bazalgette, the civil engineer whose vision would forever alter the landscape of London's sanitation. Bazalgette proposed an audacious plan, a comprehensive sewer system that would capture waste from the entire city and transport it away from the Thames. At the time, the notion of a centralized sewage system seemed revolutionary, almost futuristic, yet it was profoundly simple and grounded in the core principles of public health. With fierce determination, Bazalgette argued that a clean, efficient sewage system was not merely a luxury for the elite, but a fundamental right for all citizens that could mitigate the spread of cholera and other waterborne diseases. His proposals faced skepticism and fierce opposition. Critics feared the cost, the engineering challenges, and the ambitious nature of his plans. However, the visible consequences of inaction, death, disease, and despair tipped the scales towards reform. As cholera outbreaks continued to plague the city, public sentiment shifted dramatically. Citizens began to rally behind Bazalgette's vision, demanding immediate action to ensure their safety and dignity. In 1859, Bazalgette's designs were finally approved. Construction commenced, and the spectacle of workers digging deep trenches to lay a network of brick-lined sewers became a symbol of hope. Over the next several years, this sprawling system took shape. By 1875, it was complete, consisting of over 1,000 miles of sewers that efficiently channeled waste away from populated areas and discharged it into the Thames far downstream from where the water was drawn for consumption. The impact of this transformational project extended far beyond the foul odors of 1858. The new sewer system drastically reduced the incidence of cholera outbreaks. London, once paralyzed by the Great Stink, began to thrive again, showcasing the profound link between urban infrastructure and public health. With cleaner streets and safer living conditions, the city could turn its attention to growth and progress, laying the groundwork for modern urban planning. The legacy of the Great Stink didn't stop at the banks of the Thames. It ushered in a new era of public health awareness around the globe. Cities everywhere began to take note of London's dramatic changes and recognized the need to invest in sanitation systems that would support their burgeoning populations. The lessons learned from the crisis underscored the significance of proper waste management, leading to legislative reforms and improved sanitation practices worldwide. Today, as we reflect on London's transformation post-Great Stink, we can trace a direct line to the practices of urban sanitation in our own cities. The story of Bazalgette serves as a reminder that resilience and innovation often emerge from the direst of circumstances, shaping not only the environment we inhabit, but also our collective understanding of health and well-being. In a time when urban areas are once again grappling with challenges of population density and infrastructure demands, the echoes of the Great Stink resonate. Its legacy compels us to remember that the management of waste is not simply a technical issue, but a profound societal obligation, one that can determine the very fabric of our urban existence. The Great Stink wasn't just a foul moment in history. It was a turning point that blazed the trail toward a healthier, cleaner future for all.